When a journalist made a snide remark about Barron Trump at a charity gala, no one expected his composed reaction to be the moment that stole the show. The grand ballroom of the Fairmont Grand Hotel was a scene of sheer elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a soft, dazzling glow over the rows of impeccably dressed guests, their hushed conversations adding to the prestigious air of the evening. It was the annual charity gala, an event that brought together some of the most powerful and influential figures in the country. Business magnates, celebrities, and journalists had all gathered with a shared purpose: to support a foundation dedicated to providing opportunities for underprivileged youth. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, yet a subtle sense of anticipation lingered in the air. Everyone was waiting for the keynote speaker, whose address was expected to be the highlight of the night. Seated discreetly near the back of the room, away from the limelight, was Barron Trump. At 18, his tall stature and composed presence made him noticeable despite his best efforts to remain inconspicuous. He had been invited by a family friend, a quiet attempt to introduce him to a new social circle. Unlike many attendees who basked in the glow of attention, Barron appeared perfectly content to observe, his striking blue eyes scanning the room with a calmness that seemed far beyond his years. The gala unfolded seamlessly. A string quartet played softly in the background, while elegantly uniformed staff moved gracefully through the crowd, serving delicate hors d'oeuvres and sparkling champagne. Guests engaged in warm conversations, punctuated by ripples of laughter. Yet, as the evening progressed, it became increasingly clear that all eyes were on one moment: the highly anticipated speech. The journalist delivering the keynote address was a well-known name in liberal media circles, both revered and criticized for their sharp wit and unfiltered commentary. Weeks earlier, their appearance had been widely publicized, promising a speech that would challenge perspectives and spark discussion. As the master of ceremony stepped onto the stage to introduce them, the atmosphere noticeably shifted. Conversations faded, glasses were set down, and the audience turned their full attention toward the stage. Even Barron, who had maintained an air of quiet detachment throughout the evening, leaned back slightly in his chair, his expression unreadable. The journalist took the stage, a confident smile spreading across their face. Dressed in a tailored black suit, they radiated charisma, commanding the attention of the room effortlessly. The audience greeted them with polite applause, though there was an undercurrent of curiosity. Would they push the envelope tonight, as they often did? No one could have anticipated just how much. As the spotlight illuminated them, the journalist began to speak, their tone light and conversational. They opened with a joke about the city's notorious traffic, followed by a playful anecdote about a past gala incident involving a Champagne Tower collapse. Laughter rippled through the room, momentarily breaking any tension. For a brief moment, the event felt like any other high-profile gathering, polished, predictable, and harmless. But then their tone shifted. What had begun as broad political and cultural commentary soon took on a sharper edge. They called out well-known public figures, poking fun at their missteps and idiosyncrasies. Some guests chuckled and nodded in agreement, while others exchanged wary glances, their smiles growing strained. Then the focus of the speech zeroed in on Donald Trump. "Well, we can't discuss the state of the world without mentioning the man who made orange the new black," the journalist quipped, prompting scattered laughter. "Love him or hate him, you have to admit, he's the gift that keeps on giving for people like me." The reaction was mixed. Some in the crowd laughed openly, while others shifted uncomfortably. Barron, seated quietly at his table, remained perfectly still, his face unreadable. If the journalist had noticed his presence, they gave no indication, at least not yet. The jabs continued, each sharper than the last. They mocked Trump's policies, his social media outbursts, even his public persona. At first the audience played along, but the laughter grew thinner, replaced by a palpable unease. But the journalist wasn't finished. "And of course," they said, pausing for dramatic effect, "we can't overlook his most unexpected legacy, his successor. Let's talk about Barron." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Heads turned toward Barron, who remained motionless, suddenly the focal point of the entire ballroom. The journalist's tone remained playful, but there was a biting edge to their words. Imagine growing up in a literal golden tower, marble everything, while your dad tweets about world leaders like he's arguing over a reality show. That must have been quite the character-building experience. The attempt at humor landed poorly. A few nervous chuckles scattered through the crowd, but most sat in stunned silence. The weight of the moment had fallen squarely on Barron, unasked for and undeniably uncomfortable. Yet, as the attention of the entire room bore down on him, Barron did not waver. His posture remained composed, his expression unshaken. And in that moment it became clear to everyone in attendance his response, or rather his lack of one, was the most powerful statement of all. What he did next, however, left the entire room stunned. It was as if the air itself had thickened, holding everyone in a collective pause. All eyes were fixed on Barron Trump, a young man suddenly thrust into the center of attention without any warning. The journalist's words still lingered in the air, sharp and heavy, as if waiting for a reaction to land. But Barron remained completely still. He didn't shift in his chair, didn't fidget or glance around uncomfortably. Instead, he sat poised, hands resting lightly on the table, his expression unreadable but composed. The silence stretched, growing louder with each passing second. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Even the journalist who had moments ago exuded confidence seemed to sense the shift. Their smirk faltered, just slightly, as they glanced toward Barron's table. Perhaps they had expected a chuckle, a dismissive eye roll, anything but this unshakable quiet. Yet Barron's stillness wasn't born of apathy. There was something else at play, something more powerful. His presence, understated but commanding, seemed to expand with the silence. The same room that had been lively with conversation and laughter only moments before was now frozen in an almost eerie hush. Even those who had initially laughed along with the journalist now seemed to recognize the weight of the words that had been spoken. His silence was not just an absence of speech, it was a message in itself. It said, "I hear you, I see you, and I am unmoved." A faint murmur rippled through the room as someone near the stage whispered to their companion. The journalist, sensing the discomfort in the air, cleared their throat and forced a laugh. "Tough crowd," they muttered into the microphone, an attempt to regain control of the moment. But no one joined in. The tension was thick, wrapping around the room like an invisible fog. And then Barron moved. With slow, deliberate grace, he pushed his chair back and rose to his feet. The soft scrape of the chair legs against the polished floor was the only sound that broke the silence. At just over 6 feet tall, his presence was striking, not just because of his height, but because of the quiet authority he exuded. He looked out at the crowd, his gaze sweeping the room before settling directly on the journalist. He didn't have to say a word to command attention. His mere presence was enough to silence even the faintest whispers in the back of the room. He took a measured step forward, then another, moving toward the stage with unshaken confidence. The journalist, who had owned the room just moments before, seemed momentarily frozen. Their earlier bravado wavered as Barron approached, the crowd watching with wide eyes, a mixture of anticipation and disbelief playing across their faces. No one knew what he was going to do or say, but one thing was certain: he was about to take control of the moment. When Barron reached the edge of the stage, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. The anticipation was palpable, every second stretching endlessly. Then, with a quiet yet commanding presence, he finally spoke. "Thank you for your insight," he said, his voice calm but firm. The unexpected choice of words caught both the journalist and the audience off guard. There was no anger, no frustration, only an eerie sense of control, a presence that seemed far beyond his years. "I've grown up watching people make assumptions about me, my family, and my life," Barron continued, his eyes locked on the journalist. "For some, it's almost become a game, a way to fill in the blanks when they don't know the full story. And I get it. We're public figures. It comes with the territory." The room was completely silent, captivated by the clarity and maturity in his voice. Even those who had quietly laughed at the earlier jokes now sat motionless, a hint of unease in their expressions. "But," Barron added, his tone shifting slightly, an unspoken intensity building, "there's something important that often gets overlooked. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle before continuing. Behind every headline, behind every punchline, there's a person. Someone with their own struggles, their own dreams, and their own story. You may think you know me because of who my father is, but you don't. Not really. The journalist, who had been gripping the podium just moments ago, now seemed visibly uneasy. Barron wasn't attacking them, he was holding up a mirror, reflecting back the weight of what had just unfolded. What I've learned, Barron said, his voice steady, is that respect shouldn't have to be earned. It should be given freely, especially when you don't know someone's full story. A murmur swept through the crowd, a quiet ripple of realization. But Barron wasn't finished. He turned slightly, now addressing the entire audience as much as the journalist. We live in a time where it's so easy to tear each other down, he continued, his voice unwavering but filled with a quiet conviction. Words have power. They can hurt or they can heal. They can divide or they can bring us together. And I think we could all use a little more of the latter. The audience was spellbound. His words, spoken with a calm and resolute grace, carried a weight that transcended his age. It was clear that he wasn't just responding to a moment, he was speaking to something far greater, something universal. Barron took a step back. His gaze met the journalist's once more, steady and unwavering. "I hope this gives you something to think about," he said softly. There was no hostility in his tone, no bitterness, only a quiet strength that resonated through the room, leaving everyone in stunned silence. With that, he turned and made his way back to his seat, the soft sound of his shoes against the polished floor the only noise in the hushed atmosphere. No one moved, no one spoke. Even the journalists remained frozen at the podium, their earlier confidence completely shattered. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air. But as Barron settled into his chair, the silence gave way to something else. Applause. It began hesitantly, a single clap from the front of the room, then another. Within seconds it spread like wildfire, growing into a thunderous standing ovation. Some clapped out of admiration, others out of relief, as if the tension that had gripped the room had finally been released. What had started as an uncomfortable moment had now transformed into something profound. The journalist, still standing before the audience, attempted to muster a smile, but the shift in power was undeniable. The moment no longer belonged to them. Barron, seated back at his table, barely acknowledged the applause. He remained composed, offering only a small nod to those around him. It wasn't modesty, nor was it shyness. It was the quiet confidence of someone who had spoken his truth and had no need for validation. Within hours, the moment had spread far beyond the ballroom. Attendees who had discreetly recorded Barron's response on their phones began sharing clips online. Social media platforms exploded with footage of the exchange, the video spreading across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at an unstoppable pace. Captions varied, some praising Barron's composure, others criticizing the journalist's misstep. "Barron Trump just schooled an entire room on class and respect," one viral tweet read. Another post, shared by a well-known celebrity in attendance, stated, "No matter how you feel about his family, this young man just gave us all something to think about." By the next morning, news outlets had picked up the story. Some headlines hailed Barron's response as a defining moment, a rare instance of poise under pressure from someone who had spent much of his life in the shadow of public scrutiny. Others debated whether the journalist had gone too far, questioning the ethics of targeting young public figures for ridicule. For their part, the journalists issued a statement the following day. "Comedy and commentary are powerful tools, but they must be wielded responsibly. Last night I crossed a line and I sincerely apologize to Barron Trump for my remarks." But the apology was met with skepticism. Talk shows, podcasts, and online forums buzzed with heated discussions about the incident. Some argued that Barron's response was a much-needed reminder of the importance of civility in an increasingly divided world. Others saw it as a poignant moment of humanization, proof that even those born into public life deserve respect. Yet, amid the media frenzy, Barron remained unfazed. He returned to his daily life with the same quiet dignity that had defined his reaction at the gala. Those close to him said he barely acknowledged the uproar, choosing instead to focus on his studies and personal passions. While the world dissected every second of the moment, he simply moved forward. But the conversation he had sparked was far from over. As the days passed, the gala moment rippled far beyond its initial shockwave. Though the media eventually shifted focus to new stories, the impact remained. People continued discussing what had unfolded, not just as a dramatic event, but as a lesson in restraint, dignity, and the power of words. In a time when outrage often dominates, Barron's choice to respond with grace and perspective stood out as a striking contrast. His composure challenged the norm, leading many to reflect on their own reactions to conflict. "How often do we pause before reacting?" one journalist pondered in an op-ed. "How often do we choose words that build rather than destroy?" For some, the incident was a wake-up call. It highlighted how easy it is to dehumanize others under the guise of humor, politics, or entertainment. The journalist's remarks served as a stark reminder that words, while powerful tools, can also wound deeply when used carelessly. Parents used the moment as a teaching opportunity for their children. Videos of Barron's response were played in classrooms, sparking discussions on respect, empathy, and the importance of addressing conflict with integrity. Teachers praised his ability to navigate a difficult situation with wisdom beyond his years, encouraging students to consider how they communicate with others. But perhaps the most unexpected impact was the way the moment bridged divides, if only for a fleeting time. People from opposite ends of the political spectrum, often locked in heated debates, found themselves in rare agreement. It wasn't about last names or legacies. It was about a young man demonstrating that respect and composure still hold value in today's world. His actions transcended politics. By choosing dignity over retaliation, Barron reminded everyone watching that respect is a choice, that even in the face of provocation there is immense power in rising above. As the conversations continued, one thought resonated above all. Words can wound, but they can also heal. It's up to us to decide how we use them. In the end, Barron's actions did more than defend his own dignity. They ignited a larger reflection, a moment of collective introspection. He proved that respect, even when undeserved, has the ability to transform an entire situation. Let his example serve as a reminder for all of us. Words hold weight, use them wisely. Whether speaking to a friend, a stranger, or even someone you fundamentally disagree with, choose respect, choose empathy. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life moments that inspire us to be better. Let's keep the conversation going.